Guys, deluded, thank you very much for tuning back in. Let's not waste any more time. We're almost near the end of the season, but nonetheless, Fridays is another chance for a Q&A and for me to answer questions put forward to me by you guys. So, yeah, man, let's crack on, man. Junior Gunner asks, deluded, what level of football did you play at? Eastern Junior Alliance. I mean, man, them used to walk around with their chest held high and do this whole semi-pro thing. It's not semi-pro. So grassroots is as far as I got, man. I'd have loved to have been one of them youths in academies. I would have worn my tracksuit to raves and that as well, man. But, yeah, that's as far as it got for me, bro. Truth asks is, what about Yardim with 200 mil? He's obviously alluding to his question he asked last week. That could be a thing. I mean, who knows? To be fair with you, I mean, it's a good question, but I don't necessarily think he'll spend it, to be fair. But yeah, hopefully I've answered your question, bro. Somebody's asked, I don't know why the printer's acting, but the printer's removed your username for some weird reason. Technology. DG, what if you were appointed manager and the board tells you, here it is, only 50 million, get us back in the Champions League? What would be your plan? Let me think. Actually think if I got the job right now. It's a mad thing, but there's so much stuff to do. Where would you start? Like, I always preach to you building the spine, building a house. You can't build a house backwards. So, okay, I'm not going to act here and talk about the higher powers that be with Arsenal and all the other things that go beyond being a football manager. Let's just look at purely football basis terms. I've got to sit down and speak with the group of players. I've got to assess who is with me, really and truly, who is collectively on this mission thing, regardless of what you've seen during the season. And obviously, I have my opinions on players. You've been here and heard it, but I've got to sit down and see the players, look them in their eyes, and kind of gauge who is really on this thing and who really isn't. So I'll do that. Right after that, right on the back of it, Aaron Ramsey, as much as I love you, bro, if you do not want to sign a new deal within the next month or two, or you're not going to do this thing, you need to leave. And the same goes for Wells, who's 2019, and maybe a couple others here and there. Next, where it's all about, for me, I'm not gonna make this question more complicated than it is, because we know we've got the World Cup and all them other higher powers that be. So I won't get into it yet. This would actually make a good vid. I think I've spoken about this vaguely, but back on the topic, I would say you get a centre half in, but before that, I'd like to work with the ones that are existing here, because whether we sign I would love to sit here and say I'm gonna, and I'll allude to this in a sec, I want to sign a keeper, defensive mids, centre half. The players that are here, or just players that ain't even involved in defensively, we have to know how to defend. We need to crave defensive arts. We need to crave that. So a lot of training drills will be about playing under sustained pressure, defending when you're outnumbered. So there'd be a lot of drills where I'd focus specifically on the back 4 or 5, where I'd overload that training session with numerous attackers and have my strikers, Aubameyang and Lacazette, attacking them. Like you saw, maybe not now as much, but if you remember Spurs a couple of years ago when Walker was there and it was a fine drilled unit, that's what you need to do. And on the top of that, we need to learn to press from the front. What you see with City, what you see with Liverpool and all the other teams that have been playing of a good standard this season, they're hungry for the ball back. The minute they lose it, they're hungry. I don't see that enough at Arsenal. We don't press together and we don't make tactical fouls enough. Now, I'm not advocating playing dirty and collecting silly yellow cards, but at times it needs to be done. I guess that boils down to game management. So my first 2 things would be to galvanise the existing players and get a defensive know-how collectively throughout the midfielders, the centre-halves, the defensive players and the keepers. I'd get a goalkeeping coach. I don't sit there with the Arsenal goalkeeping coaches, but Cech hasn't adapted his game as he's got older, if you can do that. There's Cech. Ospina hasn't looked convincing. Obviously, Chesney, we all know what happened with that one. So I'd look to improve that department. Obviously, I'd probably look to somewhat revamp our academy a tiny bit. I like the way it is, and I wouldn't make major changes, but I'd like to establish some sort of department with loaning our players. I don't really feel we loan our players to good enough clubs, and I do feel our scouting could be a tiny bit better. I'm not advocating just signing anyone in terms of youth departments, but maybe that would be one I'd go for. Obviously, for me, if it boils down to, obviously I sat here and said just now, and I keep saying this, centre-half, keeper, defensive mid, first and foremost. If it boiled down to the 3, absolute priority out of the 3, like to rank them, they're all first in my opinion. But you got the centre half is the one that screams to me the most. centre half has to come into the club. I'd go for a keeper next, and then defensive mid's needed, man. Like I said, they're all first, but defensive mid would come into the club. So they'd be the things I'd look to do. To be honest with you, 50 mil is a tough one. I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'd be able to sign a madness, but I'd look to utilise the scouting members that we've just signed, and obviously the World Cup is there. There's a chance to scout certain players, so that would be what I'd do. Great question, bro, and I'm waffling, man. Good question. Ibrahim asks do you think we can play 4-4-2 next year with Aubameyang and Lacazette? Of course, the best teams or teams that aspire to can play many systems. You can play a 4-4-2 of older, you can make a variation of it. The best players can play together, and the best teams can play multiple ways. Obviously, I'm not saying the best teams change formations every week, but you get where I'm going. Personally, I like 4-3-3, but yeah. You've also asked, I think Ozil won't play the rest of the season. This is obviously asked this a while ago. With the Summer's World Cup coming up, my question is, what do you think of players resting for the World Cup? Well, if I was a player, personally, I'd want to play every game in the Premier League, but you have to be kind of smart. If you are looking fatigued at this end of the season, if you are carrying any injuries, you need to be kind of smart. This comes around every 4 years. Unfortunately, you saw what happened with Koscielny. He's had these problems of recent years. He unfortunately tore his Achilles heel or calf or whatever he tore. Hopefully he gets better, but he looks to come back the earliest December. Now he's not going to make the next thingy World Cup. I believe if he did go to this, he was going to retire from international football. So it ends on a sour note, and considering what happened at the last Euros, he must have been desperate to do something. So yeah, man, that's unfortunate. And you've also got which players should be sold and which players should be signed. I've spoken about that before. Check out my latest vids. So with all due respect, I'm not going to speak about that. You've also said, why there's so much hate for Xhaka? Because he's a scapegoat. Again, he's not perfect. He does a lot of wrong things, but he's a scapegoat, plain and simple. It's plain and simple, my guy. Emmanuel's asked, my only concern with Buvac, I hope I said his name correctly, is that he's not managed the club. And are we expecting to fight for the cup with him at the helm, or does it depend on the makeup at the squad? It's a bit of both. I mean, every top 6 club, regardless, you have to be expected to challenge for major titles or push for, I say this vaguely, push for the league or push for the Champions League places. So that would be, regardless of the new manager, that's the target, realistically. Obviously, if another manager comes in that's lacking experience, we'll speak about that at a later date. But that you've got to think that, of course, they're not going to think he's going to be like if we were to sign Simeone or I know it would never happen, but he's just in my head right now, Pep Guardiola or something. If them two were to come, again, obviously it can't happen, but if they were to come, obviously they'd be judged under different things and they'd be expected to deliver very quickly, as opposed to someone like if Arteta was to take the job tomorrow, if you get what I mean by that. So to answer your question, that ties into Buvac, to be fair. So again, it's a bit of both. You've answered the question yourself. You said it's the makeup at the squad, but again, for me, you'd be challenged, or you'd be at least challenged for at least the cup competitions. Regardless, to be fair, at least Wenger got to semi-finals or whatever. Someone else has asked, again, the printer's acting, who would you want in the summer, Zaha or Martial? Without a doubt, Martial. Martial, if you want to come and join Lacazette and Aubameyang, I know it can't happen. That man is a lovely footballer. I know I have a lot of bants with my United fan friends because they love him so much. He's such an easy target. Martial, they have families and all them things they'll get what I'm speaking about. But yeah, what can I say? Thank you very much, people, as you always, for these questions, man. Without you, this couldn't happen. So on that note, guys, deluded, I'm out.